So I was contemplating a scenario, and the scenario that I was contemplating is how to know how to formulate a boundary or which boundary to formulate when it comes to people in your life that you love, that you have no intention of not being around because they are in your life. That's not a debate. These are people that are in your life, and you realize that you need some sort of boundaries around how to cope with the triggers that are triggered when you engage with them based on your acceptance that you're not trying to change them, that they are not willing to change. This is when you encounter someone that has what you would consider unhealthy habits or toxic patterns that you might want to help them see a better perspective on. You may have attempted to help them see a better way to do things. You may have given them solutions. So a good example of this is you have a best friend that that a lot of the times will come to you and vent about a relationship that they're in, but they don't leave it, but it's toxic for them. So they spend a lot of time coming to you, venting about what happened today and what that person did and how that person did it and how upset they got. And, they'll give you all of this, but you've come to understand that this person isn't looking for a solution. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that the recognition that if you have someone in your life that you've resigned to accept them as they are, not because, and by resigning to accept who they are, it's not like you don't love who they are. You love who they are, but some of the things that they do have affected you in the past. So the first thing is you need to separate in order to create distance between you and them, so that you understand what is you and what is not you when it comes to dealing with them. Okay, what are you supposed to take on of them that is yours or not yours? So what are your responsibilities to this person? Your responsibilities to this person are as a friend, how do you define that? Or as a family member, how do you define that relationship? Like, you must first define your role in their life out loud. You have to know what your role is in their life, because codependent relationships, when you take yourself out of it and that other person hasn't changed, usually we talk about codependent relationships where you get yourself out of it and you kind of do your own thing and they do their own thing, where you don't engage with them anymore if they're toxic. But if it's a person that, like a family member, that you cannot get rid of, or you don't want to get rid of because you love them in your life, you just have to have them in short bursts or short spurts of time with them, or you have to create the dynamic between you and that person that works for you. So the first way to do that is you need some distance in order to gain perspective. So you step back, and then you define your role. as clearly as possible to yourself, so you know what is your responsibility and what is not. Because if the person is coming to you with issues that have nothing to do with you, then it's very clear that you can say, can we not talk about this situation because there's clearly no changing. You don't want a solution on this matter. You're not looking for a solution on this matter. But I also don't want to sit here and hear you basically dump your negativity on me that belongs to the person you're talking about. So when you can define your role, you know what you're not tolerating or what you're not going to be accepting anymore. Now, the problem with that is that there might be a situation where if this is an elder or someone that is just they can't see a more functional way of perceiving a situation, and they take things personal and they take things to heart, or they take offense easily. But this is someone that you care about, and you also know you're not trying to make an how do they say, you can't make an old dog do new tricks kind of thing. So you kind of resign to accepting this person is not going to change. So how do I cope with how they are? Asking them to change isn't going to help. Kind of setting those rules with them is only going to cause more problems. So how do you deal with a situation like that? And what I've come to understand is that what most people do is when they complain, most people are not looking for a solution. So therefore, can you just listen? Can you just be there and listen? And most will say, yeah, I could do that. But until what point? Like, at what point do you, how much of your time are you going to dedicate to listening to a person basically dump their stuff? Now, you can probably do that in spurts. You could probably do that when it's not a trigger for you. But what if it is a trigger for you? Every time you subject yourself to listening to someone that can affect you in a negative way. So how do you fertilize yourself not to be affected by this person? And I've come to look at it as what they're doing is they're not capable of holding space for themselves when they're dealing with their issues. But if you can't hold space for them because you're triggered, then the best thing you can do is really get down to what that trigger is for you. Because once you resolve the trigger for yourself, and it's no longer a trigger, then you'll be able to deal with the situation less reactively, and you won't take away the negative. You won't hold on to the negativity or take it with you. It stays right where it is. It stays with that person because you're not feeding that negativity. You're not absorbing the negativity. You're not taking on that negativity as if it's your problem to solve. So recognizing that most people are not looking to solve. I mean, this is obviously once you've come to the conclusion because you've asked them, do you want a solution to this? Because believe it or not, there are people that will live in a toxic situation for years. And then all they need is some person to vent to. Then they kind of release, discharge that energy. And then they go back like if nothing happened. But you're holding that energy now. if you don't know how to protect yourself from that. And even trying to come up with a solution, you could become indirectly their enemy. They're lashing out at you for what others have done, you see? So realize, once you come to the conclusion, this person is not looking for a solution. This person lacks the courage to sit with themselves and address their toxic behavior or toxic relationships, or they don't have a healthy coping mechanism. And that's where you may feel responsibility, like, well, if I'm not there for them, then you don't want to see them carry that heavy burden on their own, or you don't want to see them hold on to that pain. You want them to have an outlet for it. And that's when you love or care about someone, right? That's what you want. You don't want someone to do it alone. But the thing is, you need the person to want to cope better. You need the person to want to heal that or solve that. And the truth of the matter is that not many people actually care to do that or want to do that. And that's very difficult, because you can see them in their negative cycle. You can see that it's just a pattern again. And you can also see that they just keep accepting bad behavior. So these are people that are serial they're serial bad behavior acceptors. Chronic bad behavior acceptors. They accept bad behavior because they lack the courage to address the issue, or they lack the courage to walk away, or they lack the courage to change. And most people will say, well, it's not your job to do that for them. But when you're dealing with an individual that might be older, that they're not open-minded, or they lack a certain level of awareness to decide that there's a better way to cope or deal with or handle the situation, you may ease their suffering by at least acknowledging or being a listening ear to them. But as a listening ear, when you know how not to take it personal, because you're no longer triggered by that. And what could trigger you to deal with that? Like, it's like, otherwise you're in the same situation as them, because someone can say the same to you and be like, well, why aren't you walking away from that situation? Or why aren't you setting up those boundaries? Or why are you accepting serially? Why are you a serial acceptor of bad behavior? Because that is considered bad behavior. So why are you doing that? But you're more conscious and you know better. And then you could say, well, this person, I've accepted that they're unwilling to do that. And what makes the situation different is, are you taking that situation and are you now bringing it to someone else and complaining about it? Because if you're bringing it to someone else and complaining about it, it's because you haven't solved your own triggers, you see? So it's easy for me to tell someone, hey, you need to cope or whatever. You need to not accept this person in your life. And you can't, outside of the situation, you can see how easy it is for them to walk away from the situation or create boundaries. But they have a justification as to why they have to stay. Just like you may have a justification as to why you choose to stay. Meaning why you choose to keep that person in your life, despite their inability to heal their triggers. Well, when you heal your own triggers and you don't expect others to be healed in order to accept them or be there for them, you're not absorbing their karma, you're not absorbing their trauma, none of it. You're not even, the reason why we do our own shadow work, or the reason why we do our own healing, so that when we engage with the individuals that could potentially hurt us or indirectly impact us negatively, that healing serves both, because you can remain in a relationship with a person that has not awakened yet without you falling into their pit of despair, so to speak. But you have to be very honest, because you could say, I'm not affected by it, or no. But when the conversation is over, when the person is done talking to you, how much are you investing energetically, mentally, in the background about that situation? How much is it festering in you what you want to say to them? How pissed off you are that they don't see what you're trying to show them? Or, you know what I mean? How much of an impulse do you have to call someone else and complain about, look what this person just did, they're doing it again, or they said, you see what I mean? It's like, it's not easy. So the best solution that I have come up with is really identify the trigger. Because a lot of times the trigger is you love someone and you don't want them to experience something negative that you see a solution for so easily, and they're not doing it. You feel like they're self-sabotaging. And when you love someone, you don't want them to self-sabotage. You don't want them in pain. You don't want them to hurt. But if they're unwilling to change it, and you've addressed it, and you've made attempts to fix it, then then what you must do is accept that this person is unwilling to change, accept that you love this person as they are, accept that their behavior can no longer influence you. And the only way that person's behavior can no longer influence you is when you address what about their behavior triggers you. Whatever that behavior is that they're doing that triggers you, ask yourself, what is it about this behavior that triggers me? And when you understand what it is about it that triggers you, then you can address that wound in yourself. Because it's a pain. It's a toxic love pain. It's an unwilling to walk away from someone that you know is not coping or dealing with life in a healthier way. Because there's so much information, there's so many ways but again, it's hard to see someone you love remain in a toxic situation, or remain in a cycle that's negative, remain unwilling to open up to a new perspective or way of doing things. So if you can't change them, you can't help them change. Can you accept that, first of all? That in itself requires a lot of introspection. That in itself requires a lot of shadow work to deal with, because there's nothing more difficult than to see someone you love not at the vibration of true alignment with who they are, with the potential of their greatness. It's hard to watch someone allow themselves to self-destruct or deteriorate from the core of who they are. Because that's what love is. When you love someone, you want them at their best. And when that person's unwilling to be at their best or isn't willing to see that there's another way to deal with whatever they're dealing with, and you're not there to be their savior. You're not there to solve their problem. You're not there to be a, what do they call that? A something board? I forget what they call that. But like basically someone to just sit there and kind of like take all the negativity. Like, and people would say like, well, if you have a boundary, you don't tolerate that, and you no longer, a sounding board. There we go, sounding board. You no longer have to be the sounding board. But you also know that if you're not their sounding board and they're not willing to get help or they're not willing to change, you can take on the burden of responsibility that if you're not their sounding board, then they might self-destruct even worse because they won't have an outlet, or they won't know how, because at least with you there, they can release some of that tension, and then they're okay. So can you carry that for them? Do you love them in a way that you can carry that space or hold that space for them without judgment? Because you accept that. You accept who they are. You don't expect them to be on the path that you're on. You don't expect them to do shadow work or heal even, because they're not even looking at the world that way. So I feel that we tend to take on a responsibility that is not necessarily ours when we feel that we want someone that we love to be in a better space in their own life. So I would feel like that's what a light worker's responsibility is. So when I say define your role, maybe if you see that as a light worker, shadow worker even, you have to have a certain level of strength to hold space for someone and not take it personally and not take it home with you and not let it dwell inside your energy field. Now, I'm not saying sit there and absorb other people's pain all day and then go heal it and transmute it for them. No, what I'm saying is, have you healed your trigger to such an extent that when someone that you care about is in a cycle, in a moment that is that way, can you actually just be there? Let them go through their motions. And when it's over, can you go back to business as usual? Just as easily as you would if it was a conversation about the weather. Just as easily as you would as if it was a conversation that was mundane. but not toxic. You know what I mean? Like, can you actually go back to business? Can you go back to where you were before they engaged with you? In other words, when you engage with a person like this that you've allowed in your life, that you know has in the past affected you energetically, once you can heal that trigger, that person no longer can affect your energy, so you're able to hold space for them without it actually being a burden to carry. You're not carrying a burden. It's like water off a camel's back. That's that meaning. It literally will, and it's like to say in one ear and out the other. You're not absorbing it. You're not holding it. You're not walking away with it. That's the bottom line. So recognize when because it's easy to walk away from a toxic individual that you don't have to have in your life. This could be like a person at work that you work with every day, but you have a choice. You can quit and go to another job or change departments, or so, you know what I mean, where you don't have to engage. But if it's a person that's close to you, like someone you truly love and care about, this could be like a best friend, a family member, a spouse, a child, someone that's in your life that you know, despite all the toxic behaviors, and by that I don't mean that you're allowing yourself to be abused in any way, because then obviously you haven't done the work. Because if you really do the work, I'm talking about people that are not necessarily toxic with you personally. They're not toxic towards you or with you, but they have toxic behaviors in their own life. And because you're in their life, they come to you with these situations, these complaints, or these problems. Can you just hold space for that person in love and light without it being something that now, once the conversation is over, you got to go vent it to someone else, or you have to, fight with yourself trying to deal with their problems, or why is this person why are they telling me this? Why are they at it again? Or you're fighting their battles for them. Like, no, it's not your job to do any of that. So separate to gain perspective is the first thing. The second thing would be to identify your role in that relationship. And thirdly, can you accept the person without trying to fix or change or want them to see things your way? Accept that they're not looking for a solution, that they're not looking for you to have the answer, that they're not looking for you to even make it better. You're making it better just by holding space, because what they're needing is a sounding board, because it removes the pressure off of them when they're able to express it. So you're allowing them to express it. But when you can just hold that space and let them express it, it dissipates, because they heard themselves. You witness them hear themselves. And the less you engage, the less you contradict, the less you look for a solution, the less you try to resolve for them what they're not looking to resolve, the easier it will be for them to hear themselves and allow themselves to listen to their internal spirit, or to their inner voice, come up with I want to say with the logic, but it's more of the answers will arise from within them, because now they're not being they're not justifying to you, because you're not questioning any of it. You're not arguing or debating any of it. So if you already know that this person is in these cycles or this person does these things and it's just who they are and how they are, you love them anyway, you can't change who they are, you first need to deal with how they trigger you. If you're going to insist on having them in your life, if you're going to insist in allowing or in keeping them in your life because you've determined this person is valuable to me, is important to me, I love this person, then you're going to heal whatever they do that triggers you in order to be able to hold space for them truly without it dragging you down or without you feeling the need to bring them up to where you are, energetically speaking. So that's my message. I hope you enjoyed. Take care.